They come.
Good morning, everyone. I can see everyone's starting to join us, so we'll give everyone a few minutes to enter from the lobby while we're having a chat. This session is being recorded, so if anybody doesn't want to be on screen, obviously leave your cameras off. Otherwise, we'll start chatting in a moment. I have my colleague Slade, who'll be chatting about all things legal relating to menopause, and of course we have our guest speaker Katie, who'll be having a bit of a chat with us about the difference that we all experience. We all might have some different symptoms, so I've listened to one of Katie's presentations before, and it was very enlightening and interesting. So I'm delighted that she accepted the invitation to come and chat to all of you ladies as well. Hopefully, I think everyone should be joined in now. So I will let Slade take over. Slade.
Good morning, ladies. Great to be with you today and talk about this subject. I always feel, obviously I can't speak from personal experience directly, but my wife has been going through this for some time, and we've all got sisters and other family members. So I'm obviously at a time in life when all of the key women in my life are either in the peri or the main menopause or postmenopausal. Sorry.
Sorry, whoever that was speaking, you broke up with your question? No? Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I thought someone asked something. Can you hear me okay? Is it coming through clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yes, the menopause, I'm going to talk a bit today, get into some of the legals and also some HR aspects of it that may help. Just to make sure we're on the same page, obviously menopause isn't a disability in the sense of you being born with a condition or something. It's a naturally occurring process that will come to all women due to age. Usually somewhere between 45 and 55, most women start at least perimenopause symptoms, and the average age for women to actually start the full menopause is 51. So perimenopause, really, the preceding period is if you like, the beginnings, and a lot of women don't realise at that point some of the symptoms are actually the start of the menopause. Obviously, hormone levels change regularly for women, and so it can be quite a confusing, difficult period, but it is the ideal time to diagnose it and let your employer know. Obviously, the menopause part, I think most women do realise at that point that they're fully in it, because the symptoms are quite extreme. We'll go through those shortly. And the postmenopausal period, after you've gone through most of the changes, is also quite drastic and could result in permanent medications and various things, not just HRT, but also for depressive illnesses and other things. So how long does the menopause last? For some women, it can be as short as 4 years, and for others, around 8 years. Some women, about 10% of women, seem to continue for up to 12 years, which is a long period of time, particularly at work. Symptoms during the menopause can be mild, but they can also be quite extreme at times. And in some instances, some women start the perimenopause and go very much into the full menopause quite quickly. So it can be pretty horrendous. Obviously, a lot of women also have to have some surgery at some point to help things. I'm dealing with somebody who's in that at the moment. Got a claim against an employer for not recognising that. And approximately 1 in 20 women, according to statistics, suffer early menopause when it actually occurs at a much younger age than 45. So again, depending on the individual, this can be quite unexpected and quite difficult, and can come when perhaps children are quite young as well. So the menopause will affect all women. How it affects them and affects their ability to do day-to-day activities is the determining factor for whether or not it's a disability. I'll go into that shortly as well. So just looking at menopause symptoms, obviously the severity depends from person to person, but common symptoms are fatigue, night sweats, hot flushes, headaches, migraines, skin irritations, dry eyes, urinary problems, muscle and joint stiffness, heavy and painful periods, insomnia, difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating, sometimes forgetfulness, anxiety, depression, mood swings and panic attacks. And that's not, an exhaustive list, but some of the most common symptoms. Another aspect of disability in terms of as a legal definition will be not only how it impacts on your day-to-day activities, but how you would be able to do those day-to-day activities if you didn't have medications. So some women are able to function better with hormone replacement therapy. Some women benefit from cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, which can help. Obviously, diet factors, sleep factors, and exercise factors can make a difference. And if somebody is unable to do those, that's going to impact as well. So all of those are factors really that can be part of whether or not the severity amounts to disability. So I think the bit that's probably relevant to everybody really is how it affects you in the workplace. The seminar today is examining that and the impact of it. I think one of the most common aspects of it is that people lose confidence sometimes in their skills and abilities. Just feeling tired, having perhaps the sense of forgetfulness, perhaps through not having enough sleep, and all the impacts of those, heavy painful periods, headaches, migraines, etc. It's going to impact on performance. There's no doubt about it, and that's going to impact on confidence. Research suggests that 14 million work days are lost each year due to menopause symptoms, and that's a huge impact on the economy as well. So it's quite clear this is a real thing. It's not an imaginary thing. It hasn't been treated very seriously up until last year. And obviously, it will have an impact on women's mental health conditions. The workplace is generally stressful these days, and most people generally have some anxiety about their job. But when you're being physically impacted and you are not feeling yourself, for large parts of the week, or perhaps even for the month, depending on the severity, it's going to have a huge impact on people's ability, their wellness. So in terms of a label that it's been given is the silent career killer. A lot of women have felt pressure at work. They've felt victimized or harassed. They've been subject to processes at work where their performance has been criticised, and some of that's been done in ignorance of their menopausal symptoms, and some of that's been done despite knowing it. So there's a whole range of cases that cover this. So in terms of how do we sort of manage that and move it forward, employers should consider how an individual's job role and responsibilities might make their menopause symptoms harder to deal with. So don't think many employers do that at the moment, and I think that's something that we're all trying to change. Katie will be speaking about that shortly, and there isn't a great deal of public awareness yet, despite the fact there being some fairly monumental cases last year that pretty much made this area recognised as a disability, and some pretty hefty compensation has been paid to women now on the grounds of it being recognised as a disability. But in terms of making, if you like, an action plan at the HR level, whereas at the management level, looking at whether or not women work long shifts, whether or not they can take regular toilet breaks, which is a feature of 2 cases I've got at the moment. Their job requires restrictive clothing. Can that be an impact factor? And does the job have much flexibility? Many employers don't. It depends how senior you are, but it's something that employers need to work out and sort of assess the risk, as it were. There are currently more older women in the workplace, mainly because they're staying longer and the government's put pension ages back as well. The average age of the labour market exit used to be 60, but it's increased to 64 for women. So women are often returning to work now after periods away as well, and often come back not long before the menopause. So I think there are issues with some women returning to work as well with confidence, because that's quite a hard thing after many years out as well. So in terms of managing women at work, I think there needs to be in the future a whole of life policy, not just one that deals with menopause. Obviously, we've had sex discrimination and pregnancy related discrimination for a long time, and my hope is that these things will all be tied together now, and that companies won't just have a menopausal policy, but they'll have a policy that embraces all of a woman's changes during life, because men, put it bluntly, don't have these changes in their lives as much. There is an andropause. It's not a subject for today, but a good menopause policy would probably cover andropause as well. There is scientific evidence that men are affected, but obviously not as significantly. So a YouGov a survey in 2019, before the cases of last year, quite some time ago, at that stage, this would have been, unfortunately, put on a back burner when COVID happened, but that found that 59% of those surveyed in the age group felt that the menopause had a really negative impact on them at work. 30% had taken sick leave because of their symptoms, of which only 25% had given the real reason for their absence. So again, a sense of shame or a sense of embarrassment, and we need to remove that. 52% felt less patient with clients, customers, and colleagues. 65% experienced concentration issues. 58% felt more stressed than before the menopause. So really big statistics, really is a big issue. The Health and Wellbeing organisation, Forthwith Life, they took a survey also in the same year. They found 77% of women were going through the menopause. This is women aged 45 or over. 63% admitted their symptoms had negatively affected their ability to carry out day-to-day work. 90% said their workplace offered no support for those going through the menopause. That's the biggest statistic I'm going to give you today. 11% said the menopause prevented them from putting themselves forward for promotion. 11% admitted their menopause symptoms had influenced in some way their decision to leave their job. So in terms of looking at all of those numbers, if we were to sort of decide that we were going to go back to our workplaces now and think about putting together a policy to bring in better conditions for women in the menopause, I think those statistics are very helpful. It will certainly direct you in how it's likely to impact on your staff. These are really big surveys. Yeah. When YouGov sort of carried out a survey of employers and how well prepared they were, 33% of employers did not feel well equipped to support women going through the menopause at their workplace. 46% did not feel well equipped, and 21% did not actually know much about menopause. So those statistics just show that that there really isn't still much support for women. Just on a side note, you may have seen last year comments from Theresa May and Harriet Harman, huge women in terms of politics and law. And both of them felt the key points in their career. I think Harriet Harman described it as being hit by a train, and both of them felt very much that they couldn't really speak about it and that they just had to get on with it. And that does seem to be the gist of how most women feel. I hope that things will improve for all women. Certainly last year, now that the condition, when it impacts on performance and it impacts on day-to-day activities, can be termed a disability, and compensation has been paid out at quite a high sum for that. I'll come to that shortly. But it's certainly, all of you listening today and all of us, that know people have got issues, although it's taken till 2024, certainly everything's in place now for anybody who isn't being treated fairly at work, if that's the best way of putting it. The onus is on the individual to make work aware, though. And if you don't do that, then it's going to be difficult to say that that any discriminations happen. That's the key, is discussing it. I want to share with you that there are actually a lot of online resources that you can all look at now. Most of them, obviously, you're aware of ACAS, and the government puts a lot of money into funding ACAS to provide employers with some free support. So there is the ACAS Menopause at Work leaflet, which is online. All of these are online. There's some archived guidance on menopause at work. It needs updating. But there's also the NHS website, which has some details on menopause. The NHS also do a pamphlet, Employees, Menopause in the Workplace, which gives some basic guidance. Faculty of Occupational Medicine offers guidance for menopause in the workplace, obviously from more of a medical angle. Some of the unions have got some good guidances as well. So if you're in a union, go onto the website. You've got the TUC, there's a simply called Menopause at Work. Unison's is Menopause Guidance and Model Policy. There's also the DAISY Network, Support for Premature Menopause for women going through it quite early, and the British Menopause Society. There's also Menopause Matters and Menopause in the Workplace. So there are these organisations that are offering some help and advice. So they're certainly worth looking at as well. So in terms of discrimination, I'm not going to get too legalistic here, but if you're suddenly being performance managed, for example, or if you're being treated differently, perhaps you're being overlooked for promotion when you've hit targets that males have hit, and you think that it might be connected to the menopause, then you may well be experiencing discrimination. The Equality Act 2010 doesn't specifically name the menopause. It names 9 characteristics, and 3 of them are relevant to menopause, and they are disability, age, and sex. So when a menopausal worker experiences direct discrimination, as in, no, you can't do that role because of your menopausal symptoms. Indirect discrimination, perhaps being overlooked for promotion when an email goes out saying, would anybody like to apply for this, and it doesn't go to that person. That could be a reason. Sometimes there's victimization, sometimes there's harassment. So all of those can happen and are protected and effectively unlawful treatment. Usually the most common experience I think women have is in relation to performance issues. The cases that were heard last year, all of the women perhaps were feeling a bit under the weather from not sleeping properly, had a bit of depression from all the impact of the physical changes, or had brain fog and felt that, either the medications or just the symptoms of the menopause were impacting on their ability to actually just function as perhaps as quickly or competently as they could before. But an employer may well be liable for a breach under the Equality Act, or particularly for discrimination, but also possibly for sex discrimination and potentially age discrimination. So in terms of, there is a concept in law of vicarious liability. So you as an employer, you are responsible for what your staff do and say. Individuals can be named in legal proceedings as well if what they've done is pretty awful, and that does happen. We've got a couple of cases on at the moment with individuals in the workplace named, but generally it's the employer who will be liable. So in terms of somebody who's been subject to some behaviours or some treatments or some harassment work, can they do? The first thing to do would be to raise a grievance. That could be informally or formally, and going forward with that is not an easy thing. And if they've got a colleague at work that can go with them, or if they belong to a union, it's certainly worth not going this alone, because it's a tough one. I am close on time, so I'm actually going to skip forward and cut out some information that I was going to give you specifically about the legal side of things. I think what needs to be said here is that, in essence, if you're going through this yourself, or if you've got a family member or colleague or somebody, the employer has a duty to make adjustments to your work if it's quite clear that it's having a significant impact on the individual. So requesting that adjustments are made is the key thing for most women to do as soon as things start to impact work. If things go to performance and performance issues, then it would be worth getting an occupational health report and asking for that to be done. And that gives the individual a really good opportunity to discuss the whole of the menopause, the impact and everything. And the report should flag up that anything the employer does on a performance basis could be disability discrimination. So in terms of coming out of that process, going back to work, hopefully the occupational health doctor has suggested things like providing a fan if the lady's having a hot flush regularly at work, providing chilled cold water, adopting flexibility around toilet breaks, moving a worker's desk nearer the window. There are all sorts of things that might make a difference, but there could be more important ones about how much work they do, where they do it, whether they can work from home in part. There could be all sorts of things, but that, having that occupational health review very early on in the beginnings is really important. I'm going to say, if anybody wants to email me with any specific questions afterwards, I know we've got a limited amount of time and I don't want to go over Katie's time, but I can take a few questions now for a few minutes, and hope that that's been helpful.
I think what's quite interesting, Slade, is I posed in the chat asking if the attendees whether they knew whether their firms had menopause policies already in place, and I think we've had Julie responded saying that she didn't think her employer did. So I think it's quite illuminating, probably from everyone that's attending, that that's probably something that is lacking, is employers recognising and having the menopause policy in place.
No, I agree with that. I think we're very much, when you think that the Sex Discrimination Act was passed in 1970, that was actually the year I was born, and yet it took till 2004 for harassment regulations to be passed. That's how fast the government moves. So the best way to move this forward is exactly, you've hinted on this. I think if you start asking the questions at work, can I see our menopause policy? then I think they're more likely to either go on the ACAS website and download one, which is very basic, or actually say, let's have a consultation with all our females at work and let's find out, what we can do better as a firm in terms of supporting you in this way. And hopefully there's enough women that are in that catchment that are impacted, or have at least got family members that they've got some input on and thinking, right, this is what I want when I go through it. But yeah, all policies should be organic and should change really as time changes. So whatever you draft this year probably will be inadequate in 5 years' time, because hopefully we'll be much better as a country at supporting women with menopause issues.
Lovely. Thank you, Slade. So we've heard from what employers could potentially be looking after us with, but we'll move over to Katie now. And Katie has some very interesting insights into what us women can potentially experience or are experiencing. Katie.
Hello everybody, and thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Katie Arscott from Simple Wellbeing, and I've been trying to hide my grin this whole conversation when Slade was talking, because I love this topic. It's just so exciting, and I feel very honoured to be part of it. I had no idea what the menopause was about. I thought it happened to old women, and it literally was you had hot flushes and stopped bleeding, and that was it. So I spent 20 years in the corporate world. I'm going to give you a very quick overview as to how I ended up here, so it really does make sense. I spent 20 years in the corporate world, used to fly all over the world, various jobs, do all sorts of things. And then one day I just decided to give it all up and go and train to be a yoga teacher. So I gave back my big salary, my corporate car, everything, literally overnight, went on gardening leave, and I'm going to be a yoga teacher. My husband nearly had a heart attack. It was just all a bit shocking at the time. But at that time, I was also going through a lot of grief. I had just lost my father and my stepfather to cancer, and I was very deep in the bereavement part of my life, should we say. I'd lost 6 people in 6 years. And I didn't realize quite the impact of bereavement and stress, because again, that wasn't something that was discussed in the workplace. And I really didn't feel, I was working in a very, very male dominated building industry at that time, that I could discuss it. So I gave everything up, went and trained as a yoga teacher, and then threw myself into yoga, PTSD, mental health, trauma, bereavement, cancer. And then I looked around the room and I thought, there's a lot of old women in here. I could do some menopause yoga because I can make some more money from them, because I still had my business head on, because this was my livelihood. Anyway, my first hour of my first day of training, I suddenly realized that I too was experiencing something called menopause. And I was thinking, well, I'm not old. I'm 40. I have no idea what you're talking about. So it came as a really big shock to me. I then thought, if I believe I'm an educated woman, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a nutritionist, I'm a massage therapist as well, if I don't know that some of these symptoms I'm experiencing are natural as just part of this transition that all women will go through, then who else doesn't know? So then I really threw myself into finding out more about menopause, perimenopause, didn't even know that was a word. I was so excited. So now all I do pretty much every day is talk about menopause. Even, we were saying earlier before everybody joined, even my 9-year-old son talks about it to his teachers. He knows everything there is to know about it as well, which is how I think it should be. The conversation needs to continue. So I'm very excited to be here. So perimenopause, which I didn't know about, is the thing that happens before menopause. So I'm just going to say this so everybody's on the same page. Menopause is actually just one day. And this blew my mind. I had no concept that this was the thing. So menopause is the day after we have stopped bleeding. It's just one day in our life. It seems to me like it was this big thing that's going to happen, but it's just one day. So to be menopausal, to have reached menopause, we have to go a whole year in our 50s without bleeding and 2 whole years in our 40s without bleeding. So that day after that whole year or 2 years, that's your menopause, just one day, that line in the sand. Everything before is perimenopause, everything after is postmenopause. And as Slade said, perimenopause can last a while, up to 10 years potentially, and postmenopause is the rest of our life. Now, as we're also living longer, we can often spend now more time in post-menopause than we can in any other phase. Isn't that exciting? So we really need to know. I can't see anybody's faces, so I don't know whether anybody's in like shock horror, they're excited, or they're just thinking, oh my goodness me. So for me, it's really about education, and it's educating people from literally my son right through to the people we meet on the street, because everybody will experience menopause. Obviously, it impacts women because we are losing our eggs. That is the whole point. But if any men know women or they work with them or they're married to one, then they will also go through it as well. And I still have so many men speak to me and say, it's nothing to do with me, I'm not interested, which is really quite sad. And they will be in for a big shock at some point. So the fact that we can have symptoms before we stop bleeding is also something you may find you need to educate your doctor about. Most people think we literally stop bleeding and we have hot flushes. So I'm going to be sending around later, actually, sorry, Donna's going to be sending around later a list and some information for you. I've printed off a list of some of the symptoms of menopause, and I know Slade went through a lot of these just now. You can see there are a few. If you would like to, I would suggest that you date this and tick on there any that are relevant to you right now, because there may be someone here that you don't know are perimenopausal symptoms. And for me, it's always about building up a picture. When I'm working with women on retreats or coaching them, we need a picture. We need to have some of our history, especially if we start experiencing brain fog, because we'll have no idea what happened or when it happened. But for me, the biggest thing was actually heart palpitations, dizziness, and anxiety. I went from being outside, teaching 20 hours a week, doing things here, there, and everywhere, to not wanting to leave the house. And the biggest thing was not knowing what was wrong with me. I felt nobody believed me, and there was something fundamentally wrong. Now, I love the fact that this was full of statistics earlier. I've got a few as well. 1 in 5 women well,
I think we may have lost you, Katie. I think you're breaking up, Katie. I'm not sure you can hear us. Yeah. I shall put a message in the chat. Just let Katie know that we seem to have lost her. So was oh, you're back, Katie? With you're unfrozen now. Oh, so I think we're losing her. So
Worth logging back on.
I don't know. I think the main thing that that Katie will sort of discuss with us is that actually as women, we all have different symptoms that which we may not realise actually are linked to the menopause. When I attended a business lunch where Katie was chatting about the menopause, it was really interesting hearing from all the different women that were attending, and we all seemed to be experiencing different things. For me, I had not only had the night flush, the hot flushes and not being able to sleep at night, but I had immensely itchy skin. And I think Slade mentioned about how, you know, skin irritation is a cause. And I was getting such itchy legs that I was literally scratching until they bled. And I had literally no idea that this was a menopause symptoms. Like most women, I just assumed it was going to be the hot flushes and the night sweats. But actually listening to Katie, and hopefully she'll be able to log back in and chat to us again. She'll be able to, hi Katie, she'll be able to explain that, you know, as women, there are a variety of potential symptoms. I mean, I don't know if anyone's brave enough to want to, you know, flag either openly discussions like this or in the chat about, you know, anything that they might be experiencing, you know, because ultimately we're all experiencing something different. So Katie's back. I'll pass back to Katie, and hopefully she'll be able to continue with that point.
Can everybody hear me now? Am I good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. It just cut me off, and I nearly had an anxiety panic attack then. So welcome back. But please do put in the chat if you want to do it anonymously, just if there's any symptoms that you are going through. But as Donna was saying, Skin irritations. Oh, goodness me. Allergies can worsen because of the histamine levels, but also some of you may experience, it feels like spiders crawling on your skin. It's a stress response. We tend to go into hyper overdrive when we are menopausal. Our hormones are all over the place. So our skin goes into super hyper overdrive. So allergies may worsen, eczema, asthma, things like that. But definitely the itchy skin. And then you feel like you are going crazy. You've constantly got something crawling on you. That was something that I experienced. So when you go through this list, you may also find that your symptoms will change. A bit like our cycles, things go up and down. And it's a really good way of identifying what is happening for you right now. You know, skin issues are always related to kind of blood issues, dirty blood, lots of toxins, lots of things happening in the body. And it's very difficult to say to an employer that you've just got really itchy skin. But if it is constantly consuming you and everything about your environment or the temperature in the environment is irritating you, it makes it really difficult to focus on your work. So Chinese medicine, they call menopause moving into wholeness. And it can be a really beautiful, transitional, positive time in our life. There are just some sticky bits to get through along the way. So it's really understanding how we can identify what's happening, why it's happening, and how we move forward. It's a great positive opportunity for us to get rid of stuff as women. So you may notice an influx of 50, 60-year-olds buying camper vans and going traveling. 1 in 8 women will end up getting divorced and also leaving their jobs. So we did discuss earlier the huge impact just sickness days have had on employment, let alone women with all that knowledge and all that investment, all those connections actually leaving their positions. And it's often because it just feels so overwhelming. We are naturally losing estrogen, and that's our caring hormone. So you may also notice a lot more women not giving a care in the world to certain things. And that's really true. It's about a time for us to connect with ourselves. So the things that used to be important for women don't seem that important anymore. Hence, they might leave their job or they might leave their partner. Their kids naturally should be kind of leaving home at this time. And it becomes a time for women to actually have this wholeness and then time for themselves. But one of the things we mentioned earlier is that women are having children later. Myself, for example, I'm now 46 and I have a 9-year-old. So I'm menopausal with a young dependent child. And sometimes that's really difficult. Yeah, Naomi's just put here, no patience with the kids. Absolutely. And it's a really common thing. There are so many menopausal women at the school gates now. And that is causing, lots of confusion and lots of stress because we could have had our kids earlier, like society would like us to, but we're having them later. And there's lots of hormones, especially if you've got girls. You'll probably find that your young girls are getting periods as you're stopping yours. And there's a massive cacophony of chaos in the house and hormones and emotions. Imagine that menopause is all the dials turned up and then sometimes the knobs get broken off. So it can be really quite overwhelming. Then you go into work and you have stuff to do that's probably quite important. And you may not even remember how you got to work. You may have forgotten to eat or drink. You may be exhausted. You may not have slept very well. You may feel like you're treading through treacle. And sometimes women, most of the time, actually don't want to say this. They don't want to say that they're struggling. They don't think that this is something to share. They feel embarrassed. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame. And there's a lot of mental health problems. As I said, 1 in 5 will end up being suicidal, which I think is just so sad. When I run retreats and I've got 15 women in that room, that's 3 of them. And it's really common because women just feel that this pressure to be beautiful, to get it all together, to juggle all the plates, to make the raffle prizes or the school uniform outfits or just do presentations at work, sometimes just gets a bit much. One of the things then sort of taking into account with menopause policies in work is literally the mental health, but also the bereavement side, because as we are aging, our parents are also aging. So if you haven't already lost a parent, chances are menopausal aged women will also start being carers or start losing their parents. And if you haven't yet lost a parent, then that's wonderful. But it is a really traumatic, life-changing experience. And that's something to really take into effect with menopause, because menopausal women often feel like they're very untethered. They feel like they just don't know what's going on. The ground is unstable. Everything that they do or say is different. And then they might be losing a big key person or foundation pillar in their life, however you want to phrase it. So thinking about sort of the bereavement policy alongside mental health and menopause, they are all kind of joined together. Just going to have a quick look at these chat moments. A later mum too. Yeah, patients at bedtime. Yeah, we're normally exhausted by the end of the day. Appraisal tomorrow, tough year, breakdowns, panic attacks, brain fogs. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear all that. As I said, gave up everything. There's consequences to that, obviously, but I found that with real education and compassion and time to reflect and understand what was happening, it made the transition easier. Some days are still incredibly hard. I'm also going to send you this little pillars of women's health. It's like a quick tick list. I think there's kind of 6 things that we really should focus on. They're quite broad spectrum, so I've tried to be as quick as possible because I don't have much time with you today. But education, we don't know what we don't know. It's about making sure that we are informed to make informed choices and to educate those around us as well. But really, it's about what's right for you, your choice, your education, your belief system, your values, and also what do you need? To really stop and ask yourself, what is it you need? Flexible time working might not be what everybody else needs to have, but you might need that. You might be struggling with sleeping, so you need to come in later in the morning. You might need an extended lunch break. I have noticed I need to eat more frequently in the day, so I need to have little snack breaks. I'm self-employed. It's much easier for me to stop and chew. So have a little think about things like that. Relaxation. Stress is such a killer. Stress exacerbates all of our symptoms a million times over. Think about turning up those knobs and then breaking them off. Like literally everything just gets raised. Our intolerances, our likes, our dislikes, everything just changes. It kind of blows up. So finding ways that you can relax and doing it often. Our nervous system goes into overdrive. The body is internally stressed because we're starting.
Internet issues.
Hydrated, that also causes a lot of stress in the body. Then if you add on external stress, the nervous system goes.
I think you're breaking up again, Katie. I'm not sure if you can hear me because we've lost our camera, so we're not sure if we've lost speaker as well.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's all right. Fine. This is here you go. This is just an example, isn't it, of stress?
Yeah.
We're stressed or not. So let's relax.
I think we're definitely having intermittent audio problems here, Katie. Yeah.
No.
No, I think we are definitely losing you, Katie.
Okay.
No, I think we've definitely lost Katie. I'm not sure why we've lost our camera, so I hope everyone can hear me speaking, even if you can't see me. I know we're coming towards the end of our webinar, so if anybody has any specific questions that they would like to pose to Katie, then obviously, feel free to drop us a message, and we can always pass that on to Katie for you. Likewise, if you feel that there needs to actually be a discussion more with us all together, I'm sure we can arrange another coffee morning. I'm sure that Nicola can certainly put on a coffee morning through the Women in Residential Property, where perhaps we can have a bit more of a chat about it. I'm sure Katie would be willing to come and join us on that coffee break, where we can have a more informal discussion about any symptoms or anything, if anyone would like that. But Katie, you're back. I'll let you continue. Sorry.
No, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening here. But yes, education, relaxation, find some. I will send this out to you so you'll have some information. Exercise, really important that as midlife women that we do exercise. And also, if you're in your 20s or 30s, then please start thinking about what's going to happen in the future. As Slade said, more and more women are getting their menopause earlier, but also they don't know that they're starting to have symptoms because they don't know what the symptoms are. As I said, I was 40 when I started my perimenopause because I'd gone through such intense period of grief and expected grief, anticipatory grief, waiting for my father's cancer journeys to end. So I've also got women in retreats who are going through cancer so much earlier now, and they are also experiencing menopause in their 20s and 30s. So this is so common. It doesn't just happen to 50-year-old women anymore. And I think this is probably the most important thing to realize. It can happen to anybody at any time. Sleep is really important. Our bodies need that time to rest, to heal, to nurture, to nourish, to rejuvenate, and just to support our nervous system. So really ensuring that you sleep and make that a really crucial part of your day is very important. Diet, again, very, very important. I've got like a couple of seconds here to talk about diet. I don't just mean what you're eating and drinking. I also mean, what are you consuming? What are you listening to, reading, watching, writing? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Make sure you find your tribe of people that will support you during this transitional time, because it can really kick your butt. It can be an incredible time, but there are some bumpy bits in it as well. So really make sure that you are supporting yourself on all levels. Increase protein, increase greenery. You may find alcohol and sugar are just evil during menopause. They really are difficult for the body to handle. The sugar, the chemicals have a lot of stress on the body. So really think about what are you consuming on so many ways, and the toxicity, whether that's in work, whether that's the skin products you're using. It might even be the job that you're doing. If it no longer brings you joy and it is causing you so much anxiety and stress, it is worth thinking about, is this the right thing for me to be doing? Is this really where I can be of most value or of most use? Is it kind of making you want to get up in the morning? Because don't forget, mental health struggles are very real during menopause. So you don't want to be exacerbating all of those symptoms by just being in a place every single day that is just so distressing for you. So those are sort of sixth one is purpose. A lot of women also find that they do want to make massive transitional decisions during menopause. So they may be buying that camper van and going off to Scotland. They may be retraining. But it's a shame when people leave an employment when they've had so much joy or investment in them. They may be able to retrain and just do something slightly differently. And it is about thinking outside the box. Women are changing, but we are massive assets to companies, to the community. And it's really about looking at how can they be supported. And that really comes from conversations, from consultations, from conversations. And as was said earlier, everybody is different. So everybody has different needs, which also makes the policy idea quite tricky. Oh, I had a little echo then. So can everybody hear me still? Are we good? Has anybody got any questions? Because I still have a few minutes. And I appreciate I have whizzed through this because there is so much to say in half an hour. and I know I can't cover it all. So has anybody got any questions or anything they want to share? Is there anything that I can help with?
If anybody doesn't feel like openly mentioning it across on their mics, then feel free to put it in the chat. The chat's more personal. So if you anything you want to direct at Katie, then feel free to pop it in the chat box. Or if you want to unmic and ask her direct, feel free.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah.
Katie, what everyone's thinking, I've just watched sort of my sisters and my wife go through a lot of the perimenopause. Just wonder what your thoughts were on fasting.
Yeah, I think fasting can be a really good thing to do. I fast. However, I think it's got to be part of a bigger conversation about the individual and their health and what's applicable for them. Sometimes fasting can be extremely stressful on the individual and their actual body, especially if they don't know what they're doing or how to go into it. Often there's a feeling of restriction. And that restriction in anything, you know, whether you're giving up alcohol or food or drink, can also bring much more stress into the body. So I do think it's a very healthy thing to do. But I've also, you know, been a yogi now for quite some years. So I really understand it on a lot of levels. But some people just aren't ready for it yet. But it is a really good thing to do. But it has to be on an individual basis, if that makes sense. Another thing I just want to add in, because this is something that I think would be of use to you guys, is menopause can also exacerbate other underlying symptoms. So I am now finding, and this is something I'm really focusing on, which I love, that a lot of menopausal women are now finding out they have ADHD. And this is probably something most of you will have seen in the papers. And it's obviously something to take into consideration with being discriminate. I can't get that word out. Discrimination. There we go. That's the word. Because it's like women have had it, but now those dials are turned up and the knobs are broken off. And a lot of women are now finding out that they have ADHD as well in menopause. So again, their symptoms are just on overdrive. So that's just something to bear in mind with what's happening. I think it's like 1 in 8 women or something like that now. It's quite a high statistic. Let's have a look. Me. Oh yeah, somebody else said about ADHD and doctors. Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very common conversation now. I'm probably talking about it once a day to somebody about ADHD and women in menopause. It's really, really fascinating. And that brings in a whole different host of symptoms for menopausal women. So, has anybody else got any questions at all?
We're also waiting, Katie, to see if any questions come in. So just to try and sort of draw everything together, hopefully our discussions today about how, you know, employers should be looking after us women, whether that's checking to see if you have a menopause policy, and if not, raising the questions. You know, we can't be vocal anymore. You know, we are all suffering in our different ways. So it's about having those conversations, not only with our employers, but obviously with our family, with our friends. You know, when friends say to us, you know, we're experiencing symptoms, we ought to, you know, take heed, because sometimes we may not see it in ourselves or even realize what we're suffering. You know, we shouldn't be suffering in silence. You know, we need to get this topic out there, and so it's not taboo anymore. So, you know, if anybody wants to, you know, chat specifically to, you know, want to raise anything to Katie, then drop us a note. We can pass any messages on to Katie for you. Or likewise, if anyone's concerned, having heard anything we've heard about tonight from Slade, then obviously, you know, feel free to drop us a note. We can try and give you a bit of guidance or direction if that's needed. But the main thing to take away is, you know, there is no shame. You know, we need to talk about this and we need to be open. We're all suffering different symptoms, and it's about raising that awareness, as Katie said, finding our tribe and making a noise about it all.
Yeah, definitely making a noise and just asking questions and talking. I find it so interesting when you start having conversations with people, the amount of things I have found out in the supermarkets from random strangers and random women about menopause. It's like people just want to talk about it. So I think definitely to go into the office to start having those conversations, there are answers there. There's you know, requirements there. And it's just being the first person to kind of stand up and say, right, what do we need and how do we move forward? And I really wish I'd known about this in my 20s or my 30s. I wish that I'd had preparation and understanding, because I spent a good few years just feeling that there was something wrong, feeling in, you know, real despair really of what was happening, and not knowing it was just a really normal thing that was going to happen in my life. So I've given you loads of information. I'm very aware I've talked very fast and you've lost me a few times, but thank you so much for listening when you could and for being here. And there will be some information sent round. If you have any questions and you want to speak to me privately, then all my contact details will be on there. I'd love to come for coffee morning. I like cake. So I'm always happy to come. That's not a problem. But yeah, if anybody does want to shout out or share this information, or if you want me to come in and talk a bit more in detail, then I can, in person and slower. So
thank you so much, Katie, and thank you also Slade for chatting. Ali, I think that's our time up now, isn't it? I think Ali will send around the recording link and Katie's handout to everyone in due course. And thank you everybody for attending today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.